If you ever watched a multi-class race and wondered what the hell is actually going on, you're not alone. Because unlike Formula 1, multi-class racing isn't about having a grid of cars that are built to be as fast as possible. It's about putting completely different cars with completely different performance levels on the same track, and somehow making it work. You've got prototypes that look like spaceships flying around the circuit, and then you got GT cars based on the same supercars you can actually buy. Porsche, Ferrari, BMW, Lamborghini, Aston Martin, Corvette, they're all racing at the same time. But they're not necessarily racing each other. And that's the thing you need to understand about multi-class racing. Not every car you're watching is competing for the same position. In Formula 1, every car on the grid is fighting for the same overall classification. If you're behind another car, you want to pass it. It's simple. In multi-class racing, it's not that simple. You might see a Porsche GT3 battling another Ferrari GT3, while a prototype moves flying through the middle of them. The prototype might be fighting for the overall win, while the two GT cars are fighting for their own class victory. So even though all these cars are physically on the same track, they're effectively running separate races at the same time. That creates something you almost never see in Formula 1. Traffic becomes part of the race. The fastest cars have to constantly work their way through slower classes. The slower classes have to figure out when to get out of the way, without completely destroying their own race. But there's an important distinction here. The GT cars aren't just slower versions of the prototypes, they're built for a completely different purpose. GT cars are based on production road cars. Underneath the bodywork, they're transformed into some serious race cars. You got massive brakes, slick racing tires, aerodynamic downforce, sequential gearboxes, and hundreds of horsepower. But compared to a prototype, they're still significantly slower around the circuit. Prototypes are designed from the ground up specifically for racing. They're lighter, more aerodynamic, and can generate enormous amounts of downforce. So when a prototype catches a GT car, the difference in speed can be absolutely ridiculous, and that's where multi-class racing gets interesting. Because passing isn't always as simple as just driving around the outside. Imagine you're in a GT car, you're fighting another GT car for position, you spend several laps defending from the car behind you, you finally get a chance to attack, but suddenly a prototype is closing in at a ridiculous speed. Now you have a decision. Do you continue fighting for the car you're racing, or do you give the prototype room? Do you try to stay on the racing line, or do you back off and sacrifice your own position to avoid losing even more time? And the prototype driver has their own problem. They might be dramatically faster, but they still have to find a safe way through, because if they make contact with the slower car, the race can be over instantly. And that's one of the biggest differences between multi-class racing and Formula 1. In Formula 1, traffic usually means you're dealing with the back marker. In multi-class racing, traffic is everywhere. And sometimes the traffic is actually part of the strategy. Because the fastest line around a corner isn't always the fastest line when another class is sitting on it. A prototype might have to compromise its line to get around another GT car. A GT car might use a slower corner to defend from another GT car, well knowing a prototype is approaching. And suddenly, the entire track becomes a chessboard. But there's another reason multi-class racing exists in the first place: endurance racing. Races like these aren't designed to last just 20 minutes, they're designed to last hours. 6 hours, 12 hours, sometimes even 24. And when you're racing for that long, having multiple classes on the track creates an entirely different type of competition. The goal isn't just to be fast, it's to survive. Drivers have to manage tires, fuel, brakes, traffic, weather, pit stops, and eventually nightfall. A car that looks unbeatable during the first hour might not be the best car 6 hours later. A driver can lose minutes because of a mistake in traffic. A team can gain an enormous amount of time with a perfectly timed pit stop. And sometimes, the race can change completely because of the rain. That's why endurance racing isn't simply a longer version of Formula 1, it's a completely different type of competition. And multi-class racing makes that even more complicated, because every driver has to think about their own race, while constantly interacting with cars that aren't even fighting for the same championship position. And then there's the balance of performance. You'll hear this term constantly when talking about GT racing, because unlike prototypes, GT cars from different manufacturers can be completely different machines. A Porsche doesn't make power the same way a Ferrari does, a Lamborghini doesn't corner exactly like a BMW, and a Corvette isn't built the same way as an Aston Martin. So instead of simply letting one manufacturer build the objectively fastest car, the regulations can adjust things like weight, power, and aerodynamic performance. The goal is to keep the different cars competitive. That means you have completely different manufacturers with completely different engines, different layouts, different strengths, and still see them fighting each other for the same class victory. That's what makes GT racing side of multi-class so interesting. You're not just watching drivers compete, you're watching completely different philosophies building a race car compete against each other. But there's one more thing that makes multi-class racing so entertaining. You never really know what you're watching. A car can be first on the road and not actually be winning its race. A prototype can fly past 10 cars in a few corners, but none of those passes might actually be for a position. A GT car can lose several seconds to a prototype and still be having a fantastic race against another GT car. So the next time you watch a multi-class race, don't just look at who's first. Look at the class. Look at who they're actually racing. Because that Porsche you're watching might not care about the prototype flying past it. It might be fighting another Porsche that's only 2 seconds behind. And that prototype, it could be fighting for the overall win, while trying to navigate through an entire field of slower cars. That's multi-class racing. Different cars, different classes, different races, all happening on the same track at the same time.